Welcome to my kitchen, sweethearts. I'm Margaret Donnelly, 68 years old, a retired mother. I know, after retirement, the kids are living their own lives, the grandchildren are in another city, and you look around and realize you're cooking just for yourself. And if your husband has passed, that makes it even harder. Cooking for one, washing those dishes, thinking every single evening, what am I even going to make? After a while, it goes beyond being tired. It just makes you sad. And the sadder you get, the more you give up on cooking altogether, getting by with a slice of bread or a bowl of soup. I know because I've been through all of this myself many times, and that's exactly why I make these videos, to break that cycle for you. Last week's sardine toast video got more attention than I ever expected, and I want to thank every single one of you for that. I read every comment, and there's one I want to share with you today. A viewer named Linda wrote, "Margaret, I loved the sardine toast, but some days I don't even have the strength to open a can. Is there something even easier?" Linda, I hear you, sweetheart. Today's video is made for you. And for those of you who haven't seen the sardine toast video yet, I put the link in the description. Please watch it, because for $2, you're getting more nutrition than your doctor could ever write you a prescription for. Today, I'm going to show you 3 different snacks you can make with nothing more than a slice of bread and a few things you already have in your kitchen. No can opener needed. Each one costs less than 50 cents, and you know how important it is to save where we can. And dear Linda, not a single one of these needs a can opener. All you need is bread, and bread is already in your kitchen. But before we get to the recipes, I need to ask you a few things, sweethearts. Are you sleeping well at night? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel rested, or do you get up feeling like you never slept at all? Is your blood sugar running high or low? Has your doctor told you to watch out? If any of that sounds familiar, watch this video all the way through, because each of the 3 recipes we're making today helps with a different health issue. And I won't just give you the recipe, I'll tell you why it helps. Write in the comments what health struggles you're dealing with, sweethearts. If you have questions like Linda did, write those too. I read every single one, and I'll do my best to help you in my upcoming videos. This channel isn't just mine, it's yours too. So feel free to pour your hearts out. And if you want to help us reach more people, please subscribe and show your support. Now let's get to our first recipe. Our first recipe is going to be cinnamon sugar toast. This recipe is in Betty Crocker's Good and Easy Cookbook, the 1954 edition. Those of you who remember cookbooks like this one know that for our mothers, it wasn't just a cookbook, it was practically a treasure. But honestly, that's not where I learned this recipe. I learned it back in high school, in my home economics class from Mrs. Patterson. That woman didn't just teach us how to cook, she taught us what every single ingredient does to your body. I'm grateful to her to this day, and I pray for her soul. I still remember everything she said, and that alone tells you just how powerful those lessons were. Now, the recipe itself is very simple, but if you pay attention to a few small things, the result is something else entirely. First, we take a slice of bread. Whatever bread you have on hand will work, but let me tell you the secret. White bread is the best for this recipe because cinnamon and sugar stick to white bread better. They hold in those little pockets. My mother always used white bread. She used to say cinnamon toast is a luxury and luxury deserves the right bread. Whole wheat works too, of course, it's healthier, but if you go that route, add a little extra cinnamon so it can come through over that grain flavor. We're going to toast the bread, but here's the first trick, sweethearts. Don't over toast it. Light golden is enough, because it's going into the oven in a minute and it'll toast up more in there. If you go too far in the first round, you'll end up with charcoal. And I'm telling you now so you don't come back saying, "Margaret, why didn't you warn me?" If you're using a toaster, keep it on the middle setting. If you're doing it in a pan, low heat, and be patient. While the bread is still hot, we spread the butter right away, all the way to the corners. Don't be stingy with the butter, sweethearts. In this recipe, butter is what carries the flavor. If you don't put enough, the bread stays dry and gets stuck in your throat. Let the heat of the bread melt the butter and pull it right in. No cold lumps of butter left behind. Every spot should shine. That's the beauty of spreading butter on hot bread. You don't have to do a thing. The bread melts it for you. Now we sprinkle the cinnamon sugar mixture. Remember the ratio, 1 part cinnamon, 4 parts sugar. Mrs. Patterson wrote it on the board in class for us to memorize, and that's why 50 years later it's still right there in my head. When you sprinkle, cover every spot evenly. Don't pile it all in one corner, otherwise one bite is a sugar explosion and the next one is plain bread. And I'm pretty sure none of you would enjoy that. Now, it's not required, but I strongly recommend putting it under the broiler or in the oven for 2 minutes at this point. The flavor difference is like night and day. But if you're using the broiler, be very careful. Leave the oven door cracked and don't take your eyes off it for even 1 second. The broiler does not play games. One moment it's beautifully caramelized, the next it's black as coal. Our neighbor Tommy's mother stepped out of the kitchen once because the phone rang, and by the time she came back, the whole tray was ruined. The whole neighborhood knew from the smoke. At first, everyone thought it was a fire, and I was just about to call the fire department when I found out what had happened. Tommy, if you're watching this, make yourself known in the comments. If you've got any good kitchen tricks to share with our viewers, we're listening, sweetheart. About 2 minutes in, you'll see the sugar has melted. Tiny little bubbles forming on the surface, the edges just barely darkening and starting to shine. That's your moment. Don't wait even 1 second longer. That's when the kitchen turns into heaven, sweethearts, that smell spreading through every corner of the house. Once it comes out, wait 30 seconds before you take a bite. Don't try to rush it because melted sugar will burn your tongue and your lips. Be patient for that first crispy, warm, cinnamony bite, and then you'll be thanking me. Now let's talk about the health side of things, sweethearts, because cinnamon toast isn't just delicious. You might remember my neighbor Betty's husband, Frank, from last week's video. Frank is 73 years old and he has diabetes. His doctor prescribed him medication to keep his blood sugar under control. But one day, Frank said to me, "Margaret, these pills are tearing my stomach apart. They're making me dread eating altogether." So I told him what I'd been reading about cinnamon. Research shows that cinnamon has the potential to help regulate blood sugar levels. Now, of course, Frank talked to his doctor first. I'm not a doctor, and I'm telling you too, don't change anything without consulting your doctor. But even Dr. Patel said, there's no harm in consuming cinnamon regularly, and you may very well see some benefit. Frank has been eating cinnamon toast every morning since that day. He didn't stop his medication, but at least his stomach is more comfortable and he's actually started enjoying breakfast again. The lesson here is that sometimes we need to look for the answer in the kitchen, not the pharmacy. By the way, is anyone out there dealing with diabetes, sweethearts? How many years have you been on medication? Like I always say, feel free to open up in the comments. Let's meet people just like us in the comments section and make some new friends. Now we're moving on to our second recipe. Out of all three, this one is the most emotional for me. Milk toast. This recipe is in the 1943 edition of Joy of Cooking, which was practically every mother's Bible back in the day. But an even older source, Fannie Farmer's Boston Cooking School Cookbook, the 1896 edition, describes milk toast as ideal nourishment for the sick. Which means our mothers already knew this 100 years before any doctor ever wrote it on a prescription pad. In fact, in the late 1800s, doctors in America really did prescribe milk toast to their patients as an official medical recommendation. If you went to your doctor today and said, "Write me a prescription for milk toast," he'd laugh, or he'd brush it off like you were passing along old wives' tales. But 100 years ago, this was serious medicine. You don't have to take my word for it, sweethearts. I asked Dr. Patel myself. I said, "Doctor, is it true that milk toast used to be prescribed back in the 1800s?" He smiled and said, "Margaret, the benefits of warm milk for sleep and digestion are scientifically proven. Your mothers knew it before science did. So it's in the books, and the doctor confirms it. You can look it up yourselves too, sweethearts. Just tell your grandchild, look up Fannie Farmer milk toast. They'll find it in 2 minutes. I did this research for you because I know if you're not comfortable with technology, you end up having to take everyone's word for everything. I don't want that for you. Check it yourselves, but I stand behind every word I say. Now the recipe itself is very easy, but this time I'm going to show you the real pan method my mother taught me. It's so much more delicious than just pouring milk into a bowl. Once you try it this way, you won't go back. First, we put our pan on the stove, low heat. We drop in a piece of butter. Don't rush the butter, sweethearts. High heat will burn it, turn it dark, give it a bitter taste, and I know that's something none of us want. Let it melt slowly on low, spread across the whole pan, start to foam, but watch it, don't let it brown, because that's exactly when we need to put our bread in. Once the butter has melted, we place a slice of bread in the pan. The bread will start soaking up that butter. The bottom will toast up beautifully, turning a lovely golden color. Now let me tell you something. The old-timers will remember. Back in our day, there was no such thing as a toaster. Everything was done in a pan. My mother always made milk toast in a cast-iron skillet. That same skillet is in my kitchen right now. A 90-year-old pan, sweethearts, and it's holding up better than I am. Once the bread is nicely golden on one side, here comes the interesting part. Listen carefully. While the bread is still in the pan, we pour warm milk right over the top of it. Yes, right into the pan, right on top of the bread. Not boiling, sweethearts. Warm, the kind of warm that won't burn your hand. First, we pour a little milk on the top side of the bread. Let it soak in, let the pan sizzle. That sound tells you everything is going just right. Then we flip the bread so the other side can brown too. And on this newly flipped side, we pour a little more milk. So both sides end up golden from the butter and soft from the milk, tender on the inside, flavorful on the outside. Now we're moving to the final step. Let's call it the add whatever you like step. If you want a sweeter milk toast, I usually recommend drizzling a little honey on top. But today we're going to use sweetened condensed milk, that thick, creamy, sweet milk. The only way to truly understand what it does to the flavor is to make it yourself. We drizzle just a few drops over the bread. The condensed milk melts on the warm bread, spreads everywhere, and what comes out is something so creamy, so satisfying, I truly can't put it into words. Eat it with a spoon, sweethearts, because it's warm. This isn't just food, it's going to feel like a warm hug. And at every age we need that, don't we? Now let me tell you a story that came to mind, sweethearts. Last winter, I came down with the flu. 7 days I couldn't get out of bed. Harold brought me soup, but my stomach wouldn't take it. I tried medication, it made me nauseous. I tried tea, that didn't help either. Then all of a sudden, I remembered hearing from my mother that my grandmother, who had lived through the Great Depression, always made milk toast for her children whenever they were sick. On the second day, I said to Harold, "Make me milk toast." Harold said, "What's that?" This man has been married to me for 40 years, and he doesn't know what milk toast is. Sometimes I wonder how that's possible, but anyway, I love him. I explained it to him. Toast the bread, put it in a bowl, pour warm milk, add butter. Harold went to the kitchen and came back 10 minutes later with a bowl in his hands. I took the first spoonful, and it was like the thunder in my stomach suddenly went quiet, sweethearts. Like my mother's hand was resting on my belly. You all know that feeling. That same evening, he made it again, and by the third day, I was back on my feet. Harold shook his head and said, "Margaret, I bought you 4 different medicines for this flu, but you ate some milky bread and you're better. Why didn't you say so sooner? We wasted our money." And I calmly said, "Harold, if I had told you this 40 years ago, would you have listened?" He didn't answer, sweethearts, because we both already knew the answer. He wouldn't have. When any of us kids were sick, my mother made milk toast. Got a fever? Milk toast. Upset stomach? Milk toast. Just feeling down? Milk toast. For my mother, milk toast wasn't just food. It was how she showed love. With one bowl of warm milk and bread, she was saying, "I'm right here. Nothing is going to happen to you." And every single time we got better. Maybe it was the milk doing the healing. Or maybe it was just knowing that someone had walked into the kitchen and made something for you. Now let me explain why it works, sweethearts. Warm milk contains something called tryptophan. Your body converts that into serotonin, and serotonin turns into melatonin. So when you drink warm milk, your body is actually producing its own natural sleep medicine. I learned this from my doctor back when I had the flu and couldn't sleep. Dr. Patel said, "Margaret, drink warm milk before bed." And I said, "Doctor, my mother was saying that 50 years ago, and is that all they teach you in medical school?" He laughed, but I was right. Mothers always know before science does. And milk toast is incredibly gentle on the stomach. For those of you who wear dentures, have trouble swallowing, or have a sensitive stomach, this is perfect. You don't have to chew a thing. The toast softens right up in the milk and you just eat it with a spoon. When you were sick as a child, what did your mother make for you, sweethearts? Milk toast? Chicken broth? Something else? Write it in the comments. I want to read your childhood stories too, because a mother's medicine was always the best medicine, and these recipes should never be forgotten. Now we're moving on to our third and final recipe, honey butter toast. This recipe appears in Hints from Heloise as a simple breakfast suggestion. And I think at some point, that book found its way into just about every one of our kitchens at least once. But this recipe is much older than any book. It's recognized as one of the foundations of American rural cooking. Our grandmothers' grandmothers were making this. Butter and honey are as old as human history itself, inseparable, like Romeo and Juliet. You already know this recipe is simple, but this time I'm going to show you a professional little trick, mixing the butter and honey together beforehand. The result is something else entirely. First, we put some butter into a deep bowl. Then we add the honey on top. Now we mix them together with a small spoon or a fork. Mix, mix, mix until the butter and honey have fully come together, until they've worked their way into each other, until you have one single creamy mixture. No separate lumps of butter, no little pools of honey, everything blended into one. That mixture is the secret to everything, because when you do it this way, both the butter and the honey reach every single millimeter of the bread at the same time. Not one bite will be plain. Now let me tell you something while we're at it. If you ever see crystallized honey, don't you dare throw it away. It is not spoiled. Archaeologists found 3,000-year-old honey in the Egyptian pyramids, and it was still perfectly edible. 3,000 years, sweethearts. The milk in your refrigerator doesn't last 3 days, but honey has come down to us from the pharaohs. Honey never spoils, no matter how long it sits in your kitchen. Our mixture is ready. Now we place our bread in the pan, low heat on the stove. The moment the bread touches the pan, we immediately add 2 spoonfuls of this honey butter mixture right on top and spread it all over the bread with the back of the spoon. Every corner, every spot. The mixture will start melting in the warm pan, working its way into the bread. Move quickly here because the bottom side is browning while you spread. Right after spreading, we flip the bread. Now the other side is down in the pan, and we do the exact same thing. 2 spoonfuls of the mixture, spread it all over. So both sides end up coated in that golden mixture. Both sides are toasting in the pan. Once you've spread it well, we flip it one more time so this side gets its final toast. Let the mixture caramelize. Let the edges just barely crisp up. Do you hear that sizzle? That sound right there is the music of the kitchen, sweethearts. Just like with our other toast recipe, keep a close eye on it. The sugar in the honey burns fast on high heat, so keep it low and don't walk away. Now we serve. If you'd like, cut it right down the middle with a knife. It's easier to eat and it looks beautiful on the plate. If you'd rather not, just eat it as it is. Entirely up to you, sweethearts. There are no rules here. On Sunday mornings, my mother always cut it in half for us. She used to say, "A bite divided is love shared." These days, when I eat it alone, I don't cut it anymore. But with every single bite, I go back to those Sunday mornings. This recipe holds something very special for me. During the week, we children had cinnamon toast. But Sundays were different. Sunday mornings, my mother made honey butter toast. Sunday was special. Before church, there it was on the table, honey butter toast and a glass of milk. My mother's nicest tablecloth would be spread out. My father would read the newspaper. We children sat without fighting because fighting on Sundays was simply not allowed. And that honey toast, I don't know why, but it tasted like nothing else we ate all week. Maybe the honey was different. Maybe Sunday was different. Or maybe it was just those quiet moments of the whole family sitting together. Now it's just me and Harold at that table. The children are in other cities and we stay in touch by phone. You know that feeling. I don't need to explain what longing feels like or how it wraps itself around you. But thankfully, I still make honey butter toast on Sunday mornings. And with every bite, I find my way back to my mother's kitchen. Now let me set the stories aside and get to the health side of things. When winter came and my throat started hurting, my mother would make a slice of warm toast, spread butter and honey on top, and that was that. We never went to the doctor. Because honey has natural antibacterial properties. It soothes a sore throat. It eases a cough. It's also packed with antioxidants and has prebiotic properties that support your gut health. When I read all of that in a health magazine years later, my mother's face came right to my mind. That woman knew it without ever reading a single magazine. Mothers always know before science does. I'm saying that a second time because it deserves to be said twice. And so we've reached the end of our recipes, sweethearts. But before I go, there's one more thing. While we were making all of this, the most important ingredient our mothers and grandmothers added to their cooking, even in the hardest times, even through something like the Great Depression, was love. Let's not forget that. Whether we're cooking for ourselves, for our husbands, for our children, or our grandchildren, let's always put a little love in. So which of these 3 recipes are you going to try first, sweethearts? Write 1, 2, or 3 in the comments. I'm guessing most of you will say 2 because I think you're the most curious about the milk toast. But go ahead, surprise me in the comments. 3 recipes, each one under 3 minutes. Total cost less than $1.50. And in return, you're getting blood sugar balance, better sleep, immune support. I know some of you are still spending $50 a month on vitamin pills. But wait, the video isn't over yet. The bread, the butter, the honey, the milk, the sugar we use to make these toasts, most of you are losing money on every single one of those ingredients without even realizing it. And that loss can add up to $200 a year. If my mother were alive and saw you throwing away your butter wrapper, she would rise right up out of her grave. Now I'm going to show you 5 kitchen tricks my mother and grandmother taught me so you never waste money unnecessarily again. If my mother were alive and spent 5 minutes in your kitchen, I'm pretty sure she'd grab most of you by the ear. Because when it comes to the ingredients we just used for those 3 toasts, most of you are throwing money away every single day. You're tossing the butter wrapper in the trash. When the brown sugar hardens, you go buy a new box. The honey left at the bottom of the jar goes straight in the garbage. The bread gets stale and out it goes. The milk turns and you pour it down the drain. Every single one of those things is the same as throwing your money in the trash can. And over the course of a year, that loss can add up to $200. $200, sweethearts. That's enough to buy your grandchildren Christmas gifts. But instead, you're choosing to put it in the garbage dot. Today, I'm going to share 5 kitchen tricks my mother and grandmother taught me. And I want to be clear right from the start, these aren't fancy things. These aren't modern tactics you'd find with a quick search online. These were the survival methods of women who lived through the Great Depression. They came from my grandmother to my mother and from my mother to me, passed down like an inheritance. And every single one of them is connected to the ingredients we just used for those 3 toasts. Before we start, if you've already heard of any of these tricks, go ahead and write "I already knew that" in the comments. But I'm pretty sure most of you haven't. And please share your own mother's kitchen tricks with us too, so we can all learn from each other, sweethearts. Our first trick is about the butter wrapper. We just used butter for both the cinnamon toast and the honey butter toast. You opened the butter package, you used the butter, and what did you do with the wrapper? You threw it away. I know, because everyone does. If my mother ever saw that, she wouldn't speak to you again. I still remember how much she used to scold me for it. There is still plenty of butter left on that wrapper. You can't see it, but touch it with your hand. It's slippery. That slipperiness is pure butter. Every time my mother opened a butter package, she'd fold the wrapper neatly and keep it in a small bag in the refrigerator. She used it to grease a pan, to grease a cake mold, to run across a hot piece of toast. She'd use up every old wrapper before opening a new stick of butter. One time my father opened a new package without using up the wrappers. The look my mother gave him at dinner that evening was one he never forgot for the rest of his life. He never threw out a wrapper again. Now let's do the math, sweethearts. A package of butter runs about $5 these days. Each wrapper still holds roughly 1 serving's worth of butter. If you use 40 or 50 packages of butter in a year, those wrappers add up to about 4 or 5 full packages. That's $20 to $25 staying right in your pocket. Doesn't sound like much, but my mother used to say, a penny saves a penny, a dollar saves a dollar. Every woman who grew up during the Depression knew that saying by heart. Are you doing this trick or have you been throwing those wrappers away? Be honest in the comments, sweethearts. I'm not judging anyone. But from here on out, please don't disappoint my mother. Our second trick is about brown sugar. We just made the cinnamon sugar mixture for our cinnamon toast. Now, do you have brown sugar at home? Go open it and take a look. Has it turned to rock? For most of you, the answer is yes, because brown sugar loses its moisture after just a few days once it's been opened and turns as hard as concrete, sweethearts. And most of you at that point throw it away. You throw out $3 or $4 worth of sugar and go buy a new box. And 2 weeks later, that one hardens too. And you throw that one away the same way. How many times a year does this cycle happen? Mrs. Patterson taught us this in home economics class, and every single girl in that room just stared with her mouth open. Take a slice of fresh bread and put it in with the hardened brown sugar. Close the lid. Wait 24 hours. The next day, the sugar will be soft again. The moisture from the bread transfers into the sugar and brings it right back to life. When Mrs. Patterson demonstrated this on the board, one girl asked, "Is that magic?" Mrs. Patterson smiled and said, "No, that's science. But your grandmothers knew it before science did." And the same trick works for cookies, too. If your cookies have gone dry, put a slice of bread in the jar with them, and they'll get their softness back. Our third trick is about jars, sweethearts. We just used honey for the honey butter toast. You know that sticky layer left at the bottom of a honey jar. You scrape at it with a spoon. It won't budge. You try to swipe it with your finger. Still not enough. Eventually you give up, put the lid back on, and throw the whole thing in the trash. And it's not just honey. The bits left around the edges of a jam jar. That last bit of peanut butter you can't quite get to. All of it goes in the garbage. My grandmother never threw any of that away. Because during the Depression, what was left at the bottom of a jar was considered a luxury. Her method was this: pour hot water into the jar, put the lid back on, and shake it. Do you know what happens when you pour hot water into a honey jar? Free honey tea. Hot water into a jam jar gives you a warm fruit drink. Hot milk into a peanut butter jar gives you peanut butter milk. My grandmother would finish a jar 3 times over while we thought it was already empty. Every time she'd pour in hot water, give it a shake, and out came a brand new drink. Think about it, sweethearts. How many jars do you throw away every month? Whatever's left at the bottom might be worth 10 cents, maybe 20 cents. But if you're throwing away hundreds of jars a year, those 10 cents pile up into $25 or $30. And instead, you could have had free tea, a free warm drink, free peanut butter milk. This week, before you throw out a jar, try pouring hot water into it first. Then come back and tell me, did you like what came out of it, or was it not worth the try? I have a feeling most of you are going to come to the comments and say, "Margaret, why didn't you tell us this sooner?" And I understand. I'm still new to this channel, sweethearts. But I have plenty more secrets to share with you. So stay with me, subscribe, and make sure you don't miss our next recipes and kitchen tricks. Our fourth trick is the most important one, because bread is at the heart of all 3 recipes we just made. And bread is the most wasted food in most of your homes. You buy a loaf at the store, you use it for 2 or 3 days, the rest goes stale, and out it goes. If you're throwing away half a loaf every week, that's over $100 wasted on bread alone every single year. $100, sweethearts. Just from bread. My mother used 1 loaf of bread for 7 days, down to the very last crumb. The only thing that went in the trash was the bag. How? Let me tell you exactly what she did. The first 3 days, the bread is fresh. Those days you use it directly. Make your cinnamon toast, your honey butter toast, a sandwich, whatever you like. Starting around the 3rd day, when the bread begins to go stale, put it in the refrigerator. Stale bread is perfect for milk toast because you're soaking it in milk anyway. The softness doesn't matter one bit. By the 5th or 6th day, if the bread has gone really stale, put the slices in the freezer. When you take frozen bread and put it straight in the toaster, it comes out just as crispy as fresh bread. I'm sure a lot of you didn't know that. And if you forgot about it completely and it's turned to rock, grate it or crush it in a bag with a rolling pin. Make breadcrumbs, put them in a jar. They'll keep for months. Use them to bread chicken, sprinkle them on a gratin, mix them into meatballs. My mother never once bought breadcrumbs from the store. Not once. She used to say, buying breadcrumbs from the store is like paying for water from the tap. You already have it at home. You buy one loaf of bread, you use it 7 different ways over 7 days, and in the end, even the crumbs earn their keep. Nothing goes in the trash. That's Depression-era thinking, sweethearts. And it's more relevant today than it's ever been. How many slices of bread do you throw away every week? Write your best guess in the comments. The answer might embarrass you, but embarrassment is the first step toward change. My mother used to say that. Our 5th and final trick is about milk. We just used milk to make the milk toast. For us older folks, milk is one of the biggest things we waste. You buy it at the store, you use half of it, the rest goes bad, and you pour it down the drain. For someone living alone, finishing a whole gallon before the expiration date is nearly impossible. And every time you pour out half a gallon, that's $3 or $4 gone. If it happens twice a month, that's $8 a month, close to $100 a year going right down the drain. Down the drain, sweethearts. My church friend Eleanor said to me one day, Margaret, I hate buying milk because I end up pouring half of it out every single time. I said, Eleanor, the moment you open the milk carton, throw a pinch of salt in it. Eleanor looked at me like I had 2 heads. Salt in the milk? Yes, salt. Just a pinch. It won't change the taste one bit, but it will extend the life of the milk by 2 or 3 days. Salt slows down bacterial growth. I learned this from my mother, who learned it from her mother. During the Depression, milk was far more expensive than it is today, and refrigerators back then didn't keep things nearly as cold as ours do now. Making the milk last even 1 extra day was a real savings. And here's a bonus tip about milk, sweethearts. Never store it with just the carton cap on. Wrap the top tightly with plastic wrap. Air contact makes milk spoil faster. Every time that cap is opened and closed, air gets in. Plastic wrap cuts off the air completely. My mother had a wonderful saying about milk. They say don't cry over spilled milk, but I don't cry over spilled milk. I cry over spoiled milk. Because spilled is an accident, spoiled is carelessness. She was a tough woman, but it was that toughness that kept a family of 7 fed on $5 a week. Try this trick tonight, sweethearts. Put a pinch of salt in your milk and wrap it with plastic wrap. See how many extra days it lasts and come back and tell me. I try my best to respond to everyone's messages, and sometimes we even have a good little heart-to-heart in the comments. Sweethearts, let me sit down at my table for a moment and grab my calculator. Trick number 1, the butter wrappers, $20 to $25 a year. Trick number 2, saving the brown sugar, $15 to $20 a year. Trick number 3, using up the last of the jars, $25 to $30 a year. Trick number 4, not wasting bread, $50 to $75 a year. Trick number 5, making milk last longer, $40 to $60 a year. Do you know what that adds up to? $150 to $200 a year. $200 from things you were going to throw in the trash. I don't know about you, but I use that money to buy my grandchildren Christmas gifts, and when I see that warm joy on their faces, that's enough for me. What you do with yours is up to you, but I'd recommend you stop making donations to the garbage can. How many of these 5 tricks did you already know? Write a number in the comments. 0, 1, all 5? I'm genuinely curious. And if your mother, your grandmother, your aunt taught you kitchen tricks like these, write those in the comments too. Because this knowledge should not disappear, sweethearts. These aren't just tricks, they're an inheritance. The survival wisdom of a whole generation. If it's lost, we all lose something. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and send this video to a friend. Maybe they could use a 50-cent piece of toast and $200 in savings too. Sharing is free, sweethearts. My mother used to say, the finest thing you can offer is the thing you pass along. I'll be back next week with new recipes and new stories. I'm Margaret. Don't waste your bread. Call your grandchildren, and don't you dare throw away that butter wrapper tonight. See you next time, sweethearts.